we have an esteemed panel of business leaders that sit atop organizations that are really shaping what World Cup is going to look like next summer. So please join me in welcoming our first panelist, John Christic, Head of Global Events, my teammate at Playfly Sports. John, come out here, please. Thank you. The CEO of the New York, New Jersey Host Committee, Alex Lasry. And the VP of Sports Marketing North America for longstanding FIFA World Cup partner Adidas, Chris McGuire. And unfortunately, our fourth panelist, the founder and CEO of Men in Blazers Media Network, Roger Bennett, got called overseas for a business obligation, but his thoughts are super important to today's discussion. So he's going to join us via video from Madrid. So Danny, can we please roll Roger into the conference?
Hey to everyone at Columbia. It's Roger Bennett, the CEO of the Men in Blazers Media Network. I'm so sorry that I'm not there to be with you in person. Unfortunately, I had to come to Madrid to do a little piece of work. You're all lucky to miss me, to be candid. You've dodged one. But I really wanted to be there in person because it's an amazing time to be alive. The panel that you're about to put here, FIFA World Cup returns to North America. Those words, for me, a gentleman I know, I sound like I come from England, but I'm as American now, and I love this nation as much as Kenny Powers. Those two things, football and the United States of America, Canada and Mexico too, are the love affairs of my life. And I moved here in 1994 ahead of the World Cup, which was meant to make America a proper football-loving nation, which it did, but much slower than I think anyone at the time dreamt of. They wanted it to be an overnight success, a bit like a pogo stick or a yo-yo or a hula hoop. To a large degree, I'm glad that didn't happen. It would have been a fad with shallow roots, and instead World Cup to World Cup, the MLS coming in, the women, the US women's national team winning everything. The rise of streaming, which has brought with it access to the Premier League, the Champions League, the elite men's football, and the rise of EA Sports FIFA, the game which has sensitized an entire generation to a love of the sport and the characters that play it, one dorm room at a time. Those things have collided to deep root a true passionate fandom. And so the World Cup coming back in 2026 is really going to finish the job that 94 began. And the fan base has really evolved. I think the question that if I was there we would talk about is about how American fandom for soccer has changed since 94. It's come on so fast and so far. It's so, to me, this is the greatest place to be a football fan. You can see more live football in the United States of America than you can even in England. The internet since 94 has connected you in Los Angeles to Liverpool as closely as if you lived a stone's throw from Anfield, from Birmingham, Alabama to Manchester United, as close as if you live right by Old Trafford. And that deep connection has allowed, with the cable streaming, all of us to follow the telenovela that is football, week by week, day by day, hour by hour. Just be active participants in the global conversation and to feel super connected. There's been other huge changes. In many ways, football, elite football, is about to enter, while we're living it, the American era, where the greatest teams in the world, particularly in England, either have co-ownership that's American or dominant ownership. That's going to change the game dramatically in the next couple of decades as people like Todd Burley with Chelsea, Fenway Sports Group with Liverpool, the Cronkies with Arsenal, work out how they can take the practices of American football from a commercial perspective and a data analysis perspective and enforce their will collectively on global football. So it's going to be a fascinating time. But of course, the fan base here is now so large. I've always said that American fans for global football brands are like space to Captain Kirk, the final frontier. And every team has the United States fan base as their second or third priority. They want to win the hearts and minds of the American fan base. It's what makes this such an exciting time to be alive. A challenging time, to be honest. We're living in an era where there's going to be some Spanish teams playing an active game. Italian teams playing active games in the United States in the next year. Once that happens, a dam breaks at the club level, and then everything is possible, fluid, and chaos will reign. It's going to be a fascinating moment for all of the individual ecosystems. How will MLS respond to having bigger and bigger games from outside taking place on our turf? So this is where we are. We can't wait for the World Cup. We've worked with Michael Newman and John Christick to meet with every World Cup city. We're going to be doing college game days from coast to coast. We are doing live shows representing each of the cities. We just did a big one in LA with Jason Sudeikis and Jim Harbaugh. We're trying to capture the passion of America as we try and break through the clutter of the other great American sports in the run-up to the World Cup. And then during the World Cup, no matter what happens for our US men's national team, we're going to win the World Cup together. And what do I hope will come out of the World Cup? I will say, I think the fan base is going to swell for the men's game and the women's game. The impact is going to be dramatic. I think more and more investment will flow from commercial brands that are American and investors that are American into global football, which will create this incredible cycle of growth in the United States. But most importantly, we're going to feel alive. That's the joy of this World Cup. 39 days, a global eclipse hitting the entire planet at the same time. We'll feel things. We'll be mesmerized. We'll feel transcendent, which is what football is like at its best. And then the final thing I'll say is I hope through this World Cup that in 20 years' time, there'll be a kid, the next Christian Pulisic, will say, I watched the 2026 World Cup as a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a boy or a girl. I was driven to start playing with a ball in my room, in the streets, in the backyard, in organised leagues. And now I am world class and I'm ready to soar with the United States of America men, the United States of America women. To win a World Cup in our lifetime on the men's side, as I said, I think they're a dream we all share. And I hope that route is sown at the 2026 World Cup. Big, big love. I look forward to catching up with you all at Columbia very, very soon. Courage.
So Roger talked about what might be the legacy of World Cup next summer. I want to take this opportunity to ask my first question of John, who's been involved with every World Cup since 1994. But there was a pivotal moment back in 2018 when the United bid was realized with Mexico, the US, and Canada winning the rights to World Cup next summer. That is a process that a lot of people don't really understand how that works. And so, John, being so involved with that process, can you talk about who was on the team? How does that work? How long does it take to put together a bid like that? And what was it like to be part of that group in 2018 to learn that you had won the rights to host World Cup?
Thanks, Michael. First of all, thanks very much for having us today. This is exciting to be in front of you all to talk about something that's so meaningful to us, and it's now so close to being realized next summer. I mean, bidding for a World Cup is not something you kind of train for. You don't go to school for it. And, you know, it's easy to look back to June 13th of 2018 when FIFA decided to award the hosting rights to the US, Canada, and Mexico as the start. But it started much, much earlier than that. Some could say it started the day after the World Cup in 1994. But for those of you who remember, we also bid for the World Cup in 2022. And I was involved with that bid from day one. And if you haven't had the chance to read about that experience, we didn't win, by the way. That was the World Cup that was awarded to Qatar. And my job was very focused on pulling the requirements together to satisfy FIFA's bid process. And that meant working with all of the cities, all of the federal governments, all of the different training sites, et cetera, you know, into the bid. But I will say we've formed a set of relationships across all of the cities during that bid. that ultimately were incredibly disappointed with the result. 7 years fast forward, and that's when I got a call, and actually the gentleman sitting back there in the far right, he probably doesn't want me to call him out, but Sunil Gulati, who quite frankly, from a strategic standpoint, has probably done more to bring us to where we are today with this World Cup than anybody. Because when Sunil called me at the end of 2017, the hard work was done in terms of already establishing, listen, we are going to be bidding not only as the United States, but along with Canada and Mexico for what would be the largest World Cup ever that FIFA was going to stage. And my role was to, again, organize our cities, organize our hosting concept so that we could submit a compliant bid to FIFA. There was a lot of movement towards the bid start in terms of whether we'd be bidding just against ourselves or would there be another country that was bidding. And late in the day, Morocco decided to take part in the bid process. My first apprehension was, wow, we're going to have to pick up the phone on these cities again who went through this one time before, and despite all of our optimism and confidence in our bid, we're left pretty disappointed. But I will say one of the first things I did is I started the outreach to the cities again, and I'll tell you, they were so enthusiastic and so over the top, ready to go again. So that was a really positive sign. How do you build a bid team? We were a very lean organization. We were based out of the MLS offices in New York. We had parallel structures set up in Canada and Mexico that were all reporting into our team in New York and having to meet FIFA's requirements. Our bid that ultimately was submitted was over 1,000 pages with about 50,000 pages of contracts that had to be included, because every city, beyond just getting their enthusiasm to host an event like the World Cup, had to organize all of their key stakeholders. They had organized their stakeholders from government, they had to organize their stakeholders from their key facilities. Of course, that includes the NFL-sized arena, all of their training site facilities, accommodations, airports, and just getting that organization, took time that we didn't really have, because our process for preparing our bid for 2026 really kicked off. I think we finally got the documents in November of 2017, and our bid was due in March. So we had a very short process to get everybody aligned. And that was something that, again, just because of the enthusiasm and recognition for what was at stake here, we were able to achieve. We actually had an oversubscription of cities. At one point, we had 50 cities who raised their hands saying, we want to take part. We were able to reduce that number to around 32 at the time of finally providing them all of the documentation that was going to be required. And much like a wedding invitation process, we had a few drop out before the final submission. We submitted 23 cities to FIFA with the bid that we put forward in March of 2018, which we actually had to convince FIFA was a good idea. FIFA was actually saying, no, you can't submit that many. And our argument was, listen, we should provide you a fuller set of qualified cities and allow you then to get to know all of them once the process was formalized to ultimately decide your final set. So our core team was about 20 people. We reported into a board that was at the time chaired by Sunil and also had representations across the soccer community. And here we are, fast forward to the day where we're now less than 220 some days, 215 test days until we're hosting.
So let me pass over to Chris now. So John has a lot of equity in World Cup since 1994. You oversee a brand that has equity in World Cup since 1970, and that comes with a lot of responsibility. How do you prepare for an event of this magnitude in a market that is so important for your brand?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me too. It's a pleasure to be here. If you don't remember anything, remember I came bearing gifts, so hopefully everyone got their World Cup mini ball. But anyways, great question, Michael. I think, first of all, soccer, football, global football is the DNA of our brand, right? Our founder, Adi Dassler, was a sportsman on his own. He was a track and field athlete first, but his passion really started in football. And he was actually the first equipment manager of the West German national team, and that's really where our heritage starts within the sport. I'll give a quick story. So, called the Miracle of Bern. So the West Germans were playing Hungary in the World Cup finals. They had lost 8-3, I believe, in the group stage. So they had the rematch, and Hungary then was the world power. The first half was played in a torrential rain storm coming in. So Adi, at halftime, being the equipment manager, went in and started tinkering with all the players' shoes. And at that point, what we now know, and obviously technology has changed over time, but the stud was introduced into the world of sport, into sporting shoes. So a stud that you would see in one of our most famous shoes called the World Cup, obviously then became the cleat for American football players. But that changed the course of history and really the industry in our game. The Germans went on to score 3 goals in the second half. A lot of it is attributed to that stud change out at halftime, went on to become the world powers that they are, and that kind of kicked off Adi Dassler kind of as the founder of the modern age of the sporting goods industry. Fast forward then, so we've always been a part of the World Cup, I would say, since 54, but 1970 we became the official partner, introducing the Telstar as the first official match ball, which was a very interesting concept because that was the first, and Sunil would know better as well as John, but I believe that was the first games that were broadcast on TV, so we had to come up with a ball that could show up on air. And that's why you got to that, obviously everything was in black and white at the time, but that's why that ball has the black and white panel. So a little bit of history there. I can continue on that, but I would say, going back to your question, being the importance that we put on the emphasis of football in our business, traditionally from a pure business standpoint, World Cup years are our best financially, and we kick off that process at the end. In this case, we started the semifinal week of Qatar with our first meeting to talk about 26. A lot of what we do, obviously, is build around the products we produce. So we continue to challenge ourselves to make sure we're coming out with innovations every 4-year cycle, to make sure we're producing the best products for the athletes from a footwear standpoint, and then our federation partners from a uniform standpoint. But then obviously the icon of the tournament is the ball, and continue to challenge ourselves to make a ball that will carry in the air more perfectly than anything ever before. Make sure it's never used as an excuse by any of the players. But the most thing I love the most about being the ball is it always wins, right? So as long as we have that relationship with FIFA, we'll always win the World Cup because of the ball.
Yeah. We're going to come back to that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Alex, John said you don't go to school to be able to learn how to lead a united bid. I don't think you can go to school for the same reason of being the CEO of a host committee. Can you talk about, because this is a fairly new position for you, can you talk about your past work experience, all the things that you did leading up to this role, and how you apply a lot of those experience to your current role running the New York, New Jersey host committee?
Yeah, so I think, when you're looking at putting on an event of this scale and scope and magnitude, there's not a lot of, I think, comparisons, right? The World Cup is going to be the biggest event that the world has ever seen. If you think about the last World Cup final was viewed by the same amount of people as the last 13 Super Bowls combined. So this is a massive event where we're expecting, a few million people just to our region, over $3 billion of economic impact. So this event in itself doesn't have a lot of comparisons, but what you can kind of take from it is, kind of think about, okay, what are some other events, and then just think about it on a bigger scale. So for me, having worked in sports before, having worked in politics, having done a host committee for a Democratic National Convention, you kind of get a sense of what's needed and what and the skills that you kind of are able to learn to eventually be able to kind of run something like this. And so, if you kind of bring everything to its most basic form, this is just event management. At the end of the day, you've got to raise money and you've got to, put on an event. And for us, we look at this as having 4 pillars. So security, transportation, fan engagement, and economic impact. And those are the things that we're really responsible for. And having worked in politics before, having run travel and tourism in the Biden administration, kind of get a sense of, okay, what do we have to do to promote this? How are we going to deal with all the flood of the world coming to our shores? And also how to deal with, at the end of the day, this is going to be a public-private partnership, right, between the federal government, the state of New Jersey, state of New York, and the city of New York. And so how are we kind of dealing with all the different politics and politicians and public needs of an event like this? And then you also have to sell it. And so from a sports perspective, how are you creating sponsorships and partnerships that are going to be able to, put on and fund the operations that we have? And so trying to create value for our partners is a big thing. Trying to, I think, also educate this market on how big soccer is and the importance of soccer in not just this region, but in this country. And also, trying to show that, in typical sports sponsorship, you're signing, a 3-5-year deal. And if you're doing a deal with the Knicks aren't going anywhere. So there's a legacy and a lifeline and being able to kind of really show that ROI on something like this. It ends July 19th, right after the game. The host committee's done. We have no more work. And so the sponsorship of that is, how are you showing the value that you're going to get over these next 8-9 months? So it's a different kind of sales, but at the end of the day, as I've said, if you can't sell the World Cup, you can't sell. And so we're lucky to have such a great event, one that everyone knows, that that we kind of have as our brand and the backstop to be able to sell against. But having worked in kind of in sports and politics, and having done a few of these host committees, not a World Cup, but a few host committees, I think has really prepared me for kind of the task that this is. I don't know if it's prepared me well. I guess we'll find out in a few months. So we'll see.
Yeah. If you have a chance, go on LinkedIn, look at Alex's career. You'll see all the different elements, all the different roles and responsibilities.
You'll be very underwhelmed.
Not true. But you'll see, as you think about your careers and think about your career and working backwards. Where do you want to be? And how do you get there? And sometimes people wind up in positions where if you look at the body of their work leading up to that big position, it all makes perfect sense. You didn't know you were going to wind up here, but if you look at all your responsibilities, it makes perfect sense that you were tapped to lead the host committee for probably the most important market in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I've tried to, look, I've been very lucky in my career to have been able to do a number of fun things, be able to work in the Obama White House, my family owned the Milwaukee Bucks, kind of be able to help put on go through a championship run, brought the Democratic Convention to Milwaukee, and then get to work in, as the head for travel and tourism in the administration. There's been, I've had a lot of really interesting and fun career moves, and I would say the one thing that I've tried to kind of take from it is tried to get a sense of where I wanted to be in, when I was, I'm 38, where I wanted to be when I was 40, but also just tried to kind of take the opportunities as they come. I think if you're going to try to say, okay, I want to be, the general manager of the Knicks, by the time I'm 40, you might miss some other interesting avenues and paths that could get you to where you want to go. And the one thing about sports that I will say is there's a lot of people that want to be in it, and it's a much smaller industry than you think. And so what I've always tried to tell people is just get in the door. Because once you're in the sports family, you're in. And it's a lot easier, and you'd be surprised how many people just kind of bounce around from NBA to NHL to NFL to MLS to Adidas to, Playfly, right? Once you're in, you're kind of in. And, try to make sure that you just kind of find that opening. Not everyone is going to be able to start at the NBA, and that's okay. You don't need to be, the head of marketing for the Nets at 25. Just get into sports. Once you're in the family, you're in, and it's much easier to kind of move around and kind of eventually get to where you want to go on your career path than if you're saying, okay, the only sport I want to work on is basketball. And I'll say, I didn't really love soccer growing up. And, as I've kind of started to watch it more and, appreciate it, and now, it's the only thing on when my kids are up on a Saturday or Sunday morning, I've started to really love and appreciate the game. And I think a lot of my friends would, kind of laughed at the idea of me being the CEO of the World Cup host committee because, basketball, golf had kind of been the sports that I love, but you just kind of take the opportunities as you come. And again, if it's not a sport that you played or something, that doesn't mean that you can't be a part of it. Sports has grown outside of you had to have played it to now be working in it. And so again, I would just say get in the door because it's going to be a lot easier to navigate your way through those waters.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Earlier in the morning, we were talking about the biggest differences between World Cup next summer and 1994. Obviously, the industry is far more sophisticated. But John, I want to take a step back again and talk about the process. Our colleague, Alan Rothenberg, was obviously a major figure in bringing the 1994 World Cup to the U.S. That was your first World Cup. How different was the process in 94 or for the 94 World Cup versus 2018?
It's a long time ago. Funny, we like to refer to the World Cup 1994 because, again, it's where I got started. It's where a lot of my colleagues also were involved as well. I remind them sometimes that referencing the 1994 World Cup, if I go back to 1994, it would be like people coming into a room and talking about the 1966 World Cup and how you might look at them saying, okay, that's great, but. Well, listen, the fact is, when I first got involved with the World Cup in 1994, it had already been decided that they were bringing it here. And that was something, I think, clearly from FIFA's perspective, is they did see and recognize, the future of the sport and the necessity to find a way to provide a platform in the U.S. To really accelerate the sport's growth. And that goes back, at that time, the president of FIFA was Dr. Havelange, Al Havelange. General Secretary was Sepp Blatter. I think Alan, and again, Sunil probably knows this story better than me, Alan came on somewhat later in the process when they had already decided it. But I think what's more interesting for me to look at in terms of comparison is that World Cup, again, it was 24 teams, it was 52 matches. I think one of the first challenges they had is, listen, do we have the appetite, do we have the enthusiasm for this event to be successful? And that was something that Alan and the team that he worked with made some very, very bold and important decisions early on. It wasn't going to be a regional event. It wasn't going to be focused in smaller stadiums. We're going all in because we do have the appetite. We do have the ability to create an atmosphere that's going to fill stadiums. And I don't know whether the record is precisely held to today, but I still use the point, and someone might correct me, but the World Cup ticket sales from 1994 are still close to, if not, the record in terms of attendance to the World Cup compared to today. And keep in mind, it was after the World Cup in 94 that it went to its format of 32 matches in 64, and now we're looking at 104 matches for 2026. So it's pretty safe to say that those records are going to be busted and achieve new highs for 26. I think another fundamental difference, if I look at 94 versus today, 94 was in some ways positioned as a new product launch in the US. I remember I was working on I worked for the Swiss company at that time that controlled all of FIFA's commercial rights. And commercial rights in 1994 for an event were primarily sponsorship. Because the broadcast landscape was fundamentally different back then. There was a consortium of public broadcasters that almost as a favor to FIFA broadcast the event. It wasn't a revenue generator for a rights holder like it is today. But the company that I work for, a company called ISL, they controlled all of FIFA's commercial rights, so they sold all the main sponsorships that were involved. And we were tasked, one of my initial jobs was, listen, we ISL are concerned that there won't be awareness for this event that's going to raise the profile of our sponsors. So ISL invested in a campaign that was meant to run across the country to raise the awareness for it. So I had to meet with all the ad agencies and meet with all sorts of different groups, and they literally looked at it as a new product launch. I remember them comparing it to other product launches that were going to be made, and they came up with a campaign. When I look at it now, it's kind of comical, the way it was positioned, compared to where we are today. Okay, it is now such a sophisticated soccer market. You can't talk down to the audience. The audience understands with more detail and nuance, thanks to brands like Adidas, thanks to the efforts that FIFA have made, the progress of MLS, of US soccer, of the growth of the sport. We have such an intelligent soccer base here to speak to right now. So that's kind of, to me, one of the rewards that I look at in terms of where we started to where we are today.
Okay, so let's segue over to Adidas. So let's talk about a product launch. So your match ball was announced, was released 2 weeks ago, I believe, in Brooklyn, in front of an important audience of media and celebrities and influencers. Each World Cup has a match ball. It tells a story. It represents the refinements aesthetically and technically from its predecessor. Talk to us about the ball that's in everyone's hand. What's the story for next summer? And I know we have a video that we're going to show, but what is the big objective going into World Cup next summer relative to the match ball?
Yeah, and I would say, like I mentioned earlier, the match ball is the icon for the tournament and something we take great pride in to make sure we're delivering a great product for all the best football players around the world, and something that they'll remember as they step onto the field, right, for their first game here in one of the three countries. But a moment that they'll be very proud of, to be playing with that ball. And as I talked about, we work on very long timelines to produce products. This particular ball started right after the 22 World Cup, when we started to work from an innovation standpoint to make sure that by 26 we had what we believe is the best ball and will be the best ball ever produced. During the course of that time frame, those 4 years, we introduced different balls, whether that's with our friends here with Major League Soccer, but those all have become pieces and parts or a Champions League ball of what the 26 ball will look like. So it's a unique story from a pure product guru type thing. Our team back in Germany that's producing this, like, this is what they live and die for. Like, hey, let's subtly give the consumer, the fans, something every year that's new, and then in 26, boom, you have the perfect, in this case, match ball. And then obviously the intricacies of 26, right? So it's going to be, as we've all talked about, and Alex really dove into the numbers, but an exceptional tournament, and then bringing those three countries together. So from a design standpoint, how do we tell different stories for each country? And that's why you have the red, green, and blue look for, to match up for Canada, Mexico, and then obviously the U.S., which does take the primary color of blue on the ball. And then also the name. So we take great pride in talking to the fan base, the different communities out there amongst the three countries to come up with the name Triunda, which is very unique from English language speaking. But you take tri and then you tie in under, which is from our friends in Mexico. So a very unique storyline is what we always try to tell with the ball. And an icon that will continue to live on. I mean, you'll see in the video the iterations of the ball over the course of the years from 1970 to present day, and everyone has a unique story, right? And some of the most classic designs that you will see up there are some things that our competitors now take advantage of too. So at the time it was a statement product, but then it lasts forever and has continued legacy whenever the World Cup is played again.
Okay, Danny, let's show the video, please.
The FIFA World Cup returns. Viene el centro, Zidane de cabeza, ¡gol! Kaká de volea, sensacional. Messi, Messi, Messi. big stage.
All right.
So the unique thing on this launch, so we did this just 2 weeks ago. This is what we call our press launch. We did it underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. We had some new technology in terms of AI showing the ball and introducing it to the public, but we had 400 media from around the world that came in. Not only did they see the ball, but they also saw all the Federation jerseys and products that we'll be releasing over the course of the next 9 months or so. But a very unique moment for us. You know, the goal from a business perspective, obviously, is to make sure this becomes a gift of the holiday season. And, you know, every boy, girl, and soccer enthusiastic person wants one of these as we head into that season. And as I said, you know, I'll speak for our board here. They have very high financial requirements of us to make sure that we're making sure we pay all the bills. So it's an exciting time for us. The ball is just the first piece of the puzzle. Over the course, like I said, the next, I mean, really through March, you'll see different drops of us, whether that's Federation uniforms and then fan gear and other opportunities for the fan bases and consumers to purchase our products.
Okay. So as the ball is a commercial driver of success for Adidas, the role of host city CEO comes with a heavy focus on commercial success as well. I know you mentioned earlier, Alex, the 4-pillar strategy that you and your organization are putting forth. I want to be mindful of time. Can we address a little bit more about the focus on economic growth, development in the tri-state area? And then the other question I have for you is, how different is your role here in New York versus your counterparts in the other 10 U.S. cities that don't have a DMA as large as we do?
Yeah, I think on the economic impact side, I mean, we're looking at a little over $3 billion of economic impact for the region, and I think, you know, it's something that I think speaks to the significance and opportunity that this region has as a result of the World Cup. I think when I look at what this World Cup can mean, right? Like, the game is going to be awesome, right? The legacy is going to be great. We're going to, you know, first World Cup in 30 years, and we have the finals. And so I think when you think about, you know, in 30 years, people talking about this World Cup, they're going to be talking about New York, New Jersey, and how the finals was here. I think what we want to make sure that we're able to do is also make sure that this is a World Cup that is going to be accessible to everybody. And so when you look at, you know, MetLife Stadium hosts, you know, can hold about, you know, 70 to 80,000 people. Well, we're going to have a few million people in our region coming to participate and be a part of the World Cup. And so how do you square that circle where, you know, a lot of people who are going to be visiting the U.S. and visiting New York, New Jersey, might not have a ticket to actually go to the game and are coming here knowing that they're probably not going to actually go to the match. When you actually talk to people who have traveled to World Cups before, their intention wasn't to actually go to the stadium. It was to be in the area where the World Cup was going on and be a part of those activities. And so that's why, you know, we're going to have a 39-day fan experience, you know, at Liberty State Park for our Fan Fest. We're going to have some other incredible fan activations that we'll be announcing over the next few months. And so these are part of the ways that we're trying to make sure that the World Cup is something that can be activated and participated in by people all over the region and also all over the world. And I think that's one of the big ways that we're looking at really taking advantage of that economic impact. And then I think showing the world that if you're looking to put on the preeminent and premier sports and entertainment event, you want to do that right here, right? There's no better place to put on the biggest match in the world than right here in New York, New Jersey. And I think that's the legacy and the goal of the World Cup. And I think when we're looking at, you know, 5, 10, 15 years, were we successful? I think that's part of how we're going to be judged was, you know, are more events, are more people saying, you know, New York, New Jersey, the United States is the place where we're going to put on the biggest and best sports and entertainment events in the world. I think from a, you know, what makes our role different than other host cities is we have the finals. I mean, plain and simple. Like, we have the biggest game that the World Cup is going to have and the biggest sporting game that the world will have ever seen. So there's a different set of responsibilities that we have. I think a different set of expectations that we have. We're also New York, New Jersey, right? There's then a different set of expectations that we have as a region to ensure that we're putting on a game that represents, I think, this area and this region to the best, and one where people from around the world know this region. And we need to be able to show them that everything that they've heard, everything that they know, the confidence, the swagger, the reason that, that we kind of view, this region as the capital of the world. We have a responsibility and expectation to, put on a show that is going to reflect that. And so I think, for us, being the only host city that's going to be open from day one, from grand opening to grand closing, there's a responsibility and expectation there. And I think just being New York, New Jersey creates another set of responsibilities and expectations that that we kind of live with every day, and that is part of our goal in ensuring that we put on something that that this region can be proud of.
Are you getting any sleep?
I mean, I've got this, and then I've got 3 kids under 4, so not a ton.
So the answer is no.
I'd be surprised what you can do on a lot of coffee, Diet Coke, and
Absolutely. So quick question for you, John. If you are FIFA and you're evaluating the World Cup next summer across 16 different cities, across 3 countries, what success metrics is FIFA looking at to determine if this is a good blueprint for future World Cups across multiple countries and far more host cities than ever before?
I won't speak for FIFA directly, but I do assume that commercially they're focused very extensively on the success of the event, across all of their key revenue streams. I mean, let's be honest. This is an opportunity for them to come into 3 markets that are sophisticated. They have less reliance on having to build new stadiums and put in place extensive infrastructure projects. They can focus instead very much on delivering the best FIFA World Cup from a performance standpoint that they will probably have in a generation. So to me, I'm sure that's a key indicator for them. They're very, very focused on seeing the growth of the sport in this country continue to develop in a positive trajectory. Now, FIFA is giving the stage for that. Ultimately, for that performance to be successful, it's going to take everything from the grassroots up through the professional leagues, up through the national team performance and everything else. And that's on us. That's on us as a country. Canada as well within their country, I'm sure, is looking at this the same way. Mexico from maybe a different standpoint because of the sophistication of their team and their performance. But to me, that is something that we all have to embrace. And again, FIFA is giving us the stage for that. The one thing I'm so impressed with across both bids that I've worked with and the involvement that I have right now, I don't know whether ever again we will see this sport organized, in these cities with the level of engagement across government, across the leaders of professional sport, across all of your key agencies and services, all of your grassroots sports. Everyone is focused on soccer right now. And to me, that is an opportunity, again, that we need to make sure. I mean, Alex made the point, come middle of July, a lot of these host committees will go away. But boy, how do we take advantage of that? We need to keep soccer, in the forefront of conversation. Again, from FIFA's perspective, they're already talking about the Women's World Cup in 2031. How do we keep that flame burning bright? And I'm sure that's another marker that FIFA is looking at. I think FIFA is also aware that with the expansion of this event, and the requirements as a host, that the joint bid of multiple countries being able to come together and host this, is a positive thing to embrace. And that was something during our bid that we took very seriously, is listen, we're ready, but we'll also help you establish the blueprint of how you can have multiple countries step forward and jointly host this as opposed to putting the onus on just one. Because putting the onus on just one, given the magnitude of the event, the number of matches, the requirements, forces you down that path of, all right, well, we got to build a lot of new stadiums. We got to do a lot of things like that. So I think this is a good test and blueprint, and particularly going into 2030, where they're going to have, again, multiple countries across multiple continents hosting the World Cup. I'm sure they're looking to test and learn so that they can really move into that one and continue to advance the tournament.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if the IOC is also taking notice for future Olympic events as well. We have about 4 minutes left, and I want to get to a question about ambush marketing. I know this is a question that, Terry, you would appreciate me asking Chris, but you are coming into the United States. This is a marquee platform for the brand. You have major competition here in the U.S. How do you prepare for that? How are you and your staff focusing on potential elements from competitors trying to encroach on IP that they don't have that you do? And then what's the role that FIFA plays in protecting your IP? And we have about 3 minutes left, so I think this is a really important question to get out before we break.
Yeah, great question, because we do take a lot of security around controlling our mark, controlling the rights that we have. Obviously, we pay a very high fee for use of a lot of the IP from FIFA to make sure we're the only brand that can promote and tell the story around the games. There will be ambush marketing. We rely heavily, obviously, on FIFA to help in the controlled zones to make sure our activations that will happen in the city are with the other FIFA partners and to make sure that we're help celebrating with the fan base. But it's something we take very seriously. Equally serious, obviously, is counterfeiting in our world.
Yeah.
So, the number one selling jersey in North America is the Mexican Federation, right? And of that is also probably around the world the largest counterfeited jersey that there is. So we take working closely with FIFA's legal team as well as our legal team, we have a very wide umbrella around trying to stop counterfeiting that will ramp up as we get closer to the games. But really, it's working closely as a partner of FIFA is to make sure from an ambush marketing thing, and then even during the course of the tournament, like there's stuff that's going to pop up that we don't know about that ultimately we'll recognize, and FIFA will take care of it for us.
Okay, thank you. Alex, number one indicator of success for your organization after next summer, what is it?
That we had a safest and successful games with no real incidents. I mean, I think that would be the true mark. Like that's the number one marker of success, right? Is that people were able to get to and from the game, to and from FanFest, in a safe and secure, and participate in the games in a safe and secure way. I think that is the first marker. Then I think look, everyone's just having fun. I mean, at the end of the day, this is sports, right? That this isn't life or death. This isn't like the end of the world, right? This is sports and entertainment. And we want to make sure that the fans and the region and the people here, the people who are visiting, have a good time and leave the World Cup and all of our events saying, that was fun. And I can't wait for the World Cup to come back. Right? I think you see some of these events when they leave town, you get people who maybe have a bad taste in their mouth and they're like, I don't want to deal with that again. I think what we want is for the city, the state, for New Jersey, for FIFA, and for the country to be able to say, this was fun. We want to do this again. This was clearly a big economic impact for the country. It put us under a different light and different microscope. But overall, this was fun and a great experience, and this is something we'd want to do again. And hopefully, it doesn't take another 30 years to get a World Cup back on our shores.
Right. Well, hopefully 31. Hopefully 31. So there's be a lot of lessons learned over the next 9 or 10 months. We are out of time, so I just want to thank you for being an incredible audience. I want to thank our esteemed panelists for sharing their insights and their experience. I was not joking. Scott and I have been talking about this panel for over a year, so I want to thank the three of you for being here and sharing your wisdom with our students, and wish all of you a success in all of your endeavors leading up to next summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah.